the most important part of this really is to know that that flight or fight response that gets triggered by your behavior basically opens or closes the gate of communications and of trust building. So if you come on the wrong way, it takes only about 39 seconds for the buyer or potential buyer to draw an opinion. And once they draw an opinion, it's just like quick drying cement. It's almost impossible to change, which goes back to the things you need to do to prevent that from occurring. So for example, if you want to bond effectively with anyone, you really need to do some research. Now, can you find out information about them? Can you read information about them? Can you ask a referral source about them? So you have an idea who you're going to see before you go see them. So some of the questions I would ask is, what kind of person is Jim or Joe? Is he an outgoing, open type of person? Or would you say he's more guarded and a little bit more conservative in his approach? Well, if he's guarded and he's a little more conservative, you as an account exec or an advisor would have to modify your approach to get them on the same wavelength so that they would be receptive to your information and meeting with you. So then you have to modify each element of your sales process, from the prospecting component to the approach, all the way through your fact finder, and especially your presentation. Because the decision style of a buyer dictates how you need to communicate with them. So if they're a very detail-oriented buyer, you need to give them lots of facts and figures. If they're a bottom-line buyer, well, you need to get to the bottom line pretty quickly. If they're an expressive, open, creative type buyer, you need to use visuals and pictures because they think in that format. And if they're a conservative buyer who's really nice and easygoing, well, you need to slow down because those people are never going to buy as fast as you would like them to. Now, in the past, I've seen many advisors and agents walk away from people who weren't the same as they were. They would come back and say, oh, they don't make decisions. Oh, they won't make a decision. Well, because they were looking at the decision process from their own eyes, but not from the client's eyes. So if you understand that, you're able to detect that early in the engagement. What I do when I see a slower paced, easygoing kind of buyer, I don't say next. I say when. It's not if, it's when will they buy from me. And I change my entire sales process. I know they're not going to make a quick decision. I know that they're consensus managers. I know that they're going to collaborate with people before they make a decision because that type of buyer has an internal security requirement. They don't like change. Now, what is a salesperson? What are you doing effectively in your relationship with a client? You're asking them to make changes to their current situation. They may be positive changes, but they're still changes. Some buyers don't like change, so you have to condition them to the change. You have to spend more time with them. You have to show them more consistently, more through different mechanisms, follow-up, feedback, marketing, client development, that you want a relationship with them. And when you demonstrate those behaviors, they relax, they open up, and then they engage and start listening to what you have to say. The opposite type of buyer is the one that doesn't want a relationship. So if you're a relationship person and you're going in and talking about relationship, long-term, touchy-feely, they're thinking internally, get out of here. I don't need any more good friends. I want somebody who helps me solve problems. I want somebody who saves me time, somebody who saves me energy. I'm looking at you like you're a tool that I need to support my growth in my business. And if you can help me, I'll be happy to listen to you. Now, those buyers can be very nice people. They also have good values, but you don't get to them until you prove yourself. And once you prove yourself, then they'd be happy to introduce you to their friends, their family, and their associates. So you have to really see who you're going to see before you see them. Now, is that always possible? It's really not. Sometimes you try, sometimes you're in a rush, sometimes you're scrambling in the last minute just to get out the door and meet people. So you get stressed. Without realizing it, you transfer that stress to the people you're trying to influence. That makes your natural strengths weaknesses. So what happens is instead of creating chemistry, you create a defensive environment. You create stress, and when stress is high, people don't listen. And that's, again, goes back to the reticular activating system. So you have to really, some of the techniques, you have to calm down, you have to sit down and visualize, you have to, de-stress before you go into an appointment. Because if you don't realize that you're transferring an energy, you're sending a message, they're receiving it, and they're saying, what's wrong with this person? And they start to build up their defenses, which lowers their objectivity and willingness to open up and communicate with you effectively. I think the impact of behavioral science as it relates to sales is incredibly important to understand, because it can literally double your ability to improve your income, improve your effectiveness. If you act out of your normal behaviors and you do it without thinking, you're going to match up with about 50% of the market. If you get conscious of it and you do a little work and you learn some of the tools and techniques which are available, you can raise your sales effectiveness by close to 50%. Now, in today's world, the numbers game still applies. It always will. It's always part of sales. High activity will actually overcome many obstacles. But the fact is, it's getting harder to get in front of people. So you have to do a better job. You have to be more effective. You can't rely on just churning numbers. The other thing about that is in the high net worth marketplace, study after study will tell you that people in that market want to be referred. They do not want to meet people from cold calls. They do not want to be targeted, and they take their recommendations and introductions through people that they know. So that also is a big issue with behavioral science, because if they're not comfortable with you and communicating with you, and they're not going to give you a referral, they're not going to introduce you to their network of friends and families. So it makes, it's really something that I encourage people to take a real serious look at. There's some great materials on this subject. They can improve their sales effectiveness. The most important thing really is when you adapt to a client or a prospect and make the adjustment, that's the greatest form of respect you can give to another individual. It's basically saying, I am so concerned about serving you effectively that I'm willing to adapt my behavior to meet your needs, your communication needs, your preferences, your approach to the decision process. If you master those strategies, you can double and triple your effectiveness. Your clients will feel better about you, they'll bond with you quicker, and they'll be more inclined to give you referrals to their friends and family and network of associates.